Okay. I'd like to introduce the Reverend Wally Eamer. Wally is a deacon in the Diocese of British Columbia, which covers all of Vancouver Island off the west coast of Canada. I'm really thankful that you've agreed to do this interview, Wally, and to talk about diaconal ministry and vocation as you've experienced it and learned. Wally has been involved in a number of different ministries. And so without further ado, Wally, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Well, hello. I have 4 questions that I am going to try to answer. I will answer. And the first is, what led me to the diaconate? Well, I took my first communion late in life, 1997. I was in my 40s. And very soon after, a sense of push, a gentle push, but an insistent push, came over me. To me, it was like a gentle wind at my back, pushing me forward. And my sense was that that required service through the institution of the church. But how was that call fulfilled? And I struggled with that. I was ordained late in 2008, so there's roughly 11 years here. And I went from, well, it must be something completely different than what I was doing before that, to, so I looked at being a priest. I looked at service in the third world because I actually took my first communion in Central America in a little rural church. And to that, I just felt a sense of indifferent silence. I didn't get any response at all internally. So I ignored it and went away. And to the surprise of very few, that didn't work either. Yet all that time I was building experience and skills that were essential when I eventually did recognize and begin to fulfill the ministry that I believe I was called to. The synthesis was a deacon. I'm called out into the world. Church is a great place to be for a day or two in the week, but not 7 days of the week. I need to be outside. I'm not a monk. And we recognize when the call, we don't choose a call. We recognize it. We can choose to recognize it, but we don't decide that that's our call. We recognize that this is our call. My focus as a deacon has been reconciliation. It started in work. At that time, I was working for a government of Canada that had responsibility for what I'll call public lands. And I worked on their behalf with First Nations and with other stakeholders, environmentalists, forest companies, mining companies, local communities, around trying to reach a consensus arrangement for the Pacific coast of Canada from roughly the Alaska Panhandle south to the middle of Vancouver Island. That's now called the Great Bear Rainforest by many. In that job, when I was with the province, the job was a deal weaver. After the deal was made, and we had a consensus agreement, a group of First Nations came to me and asked if I would work for them and assist them in the implementation. You may be hearing my dog in the background, by the way. And I went there, and I think that was equally, if not more important than what I had done previously. And as a deacon, I saw my role as giving others, in this case First Nations, a more full and powerful voice. It was not to be their voice. That's creating an icon out of yourself. That should only be in the last worst case scenario that you become their voice. But I could help them strengthen their voice, not where they wish to go, but good ways to get to where they wish to go. And all this work in both roles with the First Nations and before that with the provincial government, most of what I did was trying to build a working level of trust among disparate groups. And faith itself is also a matter, in my mind, of trust. With trust, wonderful things can be built, and without trust, it will fall to sectarian warfare. After about 10 years with that, or over 10 years with that group of First Nations, I decided that the world was getting younger, or I was getting older, take your choice, and that others should do what I had been doing. So I backed away, and now my focus is, how do human beings live within creation in a way that allows us to flourish and the rest of creation to flourish as well? And that verb flourish is important to me because that's the basis of reconciliation work, not to have a war and have a new set of overlords, but to have a working level of trust where we're all God's children, we're all God's creation, and everything has value. What biblical story, well, there's lots of them, inspires me. But the one that most captured me, and the phrase went on my business cards, I'm old enough to still have business cards, is from the Good Samaritan. Go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. Who was the neighbor of the man who fell among thieves, and it was the one who showed him compassion. And it would be easy and wrong to say, well, I must be the Good Samaritan and others have other roles. I find over my lifetime, sometimes I've been the Good Samaritan. More often I've been perhaps one of the violent thieves, the man left for dead, at least in one case, the innkeeper. But for me especially, the very important people who crossed the road so that they could keep their appointments and they bypassed the man who was dying on the road. And we all do that. And that's something that is sinful. And that's something that as deacons we're called to say, stop. And I will say one of the few benefits, if you wish, of age is that increasingly I no longer cross to the other side of the road to keep my appointment. As a deacon, what images of diaconia are important to me? And the churches are full of images, icons. But perhaps because I am a deacon, the image that resonates with me is out into the world. And that image is of a river flowing, sometimes quickly, sometimes almost stagnant. There's countercurrent, so the river goes one way and the countercurrent brings you back. Any of you who have canoed on rivers will know how that works. There's even an extreme drought. Major parts of the river can dry up. But that river leads us to God, and we need to honor the river. We need to do what we are called to do while we are on that river, and always have faith that the river is going towards the sea. God bless you all in your discernment. God bless you all in your ministry. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally.